So as a small guard, what separates myself is what can I control, my effort, my attitude, um, work ethic on and off the court, the discipline that I have to stay low on defense, or being extra scrappier. And now I have to work twice as hard to create separation. I got to get twice as low now to beat my 6'4" defender. So it's just everything is having to be two times more, two times more. And that was kind of my whole mentality being an undersized guard and always being the smallest guy on the court is I had to play twice as big in whatever role that I had on the team. So that was very much what that post was about, is that it's not an easy journey to get to where you want to be, but it can sure get a lot easier the harder you work. So it's easier. It's a harder
You are
journey.
listening to the Bridging Impact Podcast, transforming leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. Today, my guest is Jason Levy. Jason is the founder of Level Up. All right, so quick background on his story. Jason went from the driveway to the NCAA playing basketball from the age of 6. He went on to become a top player in the state during his high school and club career. He later went on to play 3 seasons of collegiate level basketball and then continue on to play at the semi-pro level. After his first season, he came down with a tough injury, tearing a majority of the ligaments in his knee, ACL, MCL, LCL, and meniscus. Throughout his journey, it led him to focus on how to recover and prevent this injury from happening to others while building his body from the ground up. After studying the importance of recovery and injury prevention, he took the training avenue. Along the way, he's had the great opportunity to work with many professional trainers, social media influencers, Dribble Too Much, Hand to Life, and athletes from middle school, high school, the NCAA, overseas professionals, and NBA athletes, with the center of attention on basketball strength and conditioning slash strength or stretching and recovery. With Level Up, his goal is to help everyone achieve their goals with growth and development while focusing on the process that leads to results. So welcome to the show, Jason. I'm excited for our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we got a lot on there. And in the first place, we really like to start is just what kind of impact did the game of basketball have on your life growing up?
Personally, I would say just being an athlete since the age of 6 and playing on my driveway and progressing through competitive and middle school basketball and high school, college, and then semi-pro. It's always been a big part of who I am. And I think that's something every athlete can actually very much relate to, as we tend to, growing up with the sport, build our identity very much around this sport. So with that being said, when an injury like mine happens, a traumatic injury, ACL, and just tearing everything else as well, it kind of feels as if you lose a big part of your identity in a snap. And the first thought is just kind of what's next, or am I done? Is this the last time, or are my goals no longer possible? Um, and I would say that was a big part of basketball for me, is I very much based my identity around being a basketball player, being the best that I can be, and always striving to find a way to be better. And I always made my lifestyle actually around basketball, whether it was I have to practice before I hang out with friends, or make sure I get my shots up before I go do something fun on the weekend, or I even made sure at times it was basketball before my schoolwork. And I think that was a big part of what basketball has brought to me.
Totally. Sounds like basketball has been a priority in your life for quite some time, right? And you made all your schedules and commitments around the game of basketball. And can you talk about some of the challenges and obstacles that you faced when you kind of went through that injury? You kind of briefly touched on the identity crisis that you have, especially like, if you're not able to get up, X amount of shots a day, you're not able to train. It takes a way of, a sense of self-worth. I feel like that's something that, basketball and sports can bring us. So can you share what that experience was like for you?
So the day that that injury happened, I remember I was actually going up for a layup and someone tried to cut me off and their knee hit mine and I dislocated my knee as long as tearing all the ligaments. Um, and I remember when that first happened, I was kind of on the ground looking at my teammates like I'm done. And I told my teammates, I remember they were just like looking over me. I was like, guys, I'm done. I'm done. Like, go get help. Like, I'm just done. I can't. And the first thought was that I just lost the game of basketball. Like, I can't play. And I knew something was very much wrong. But with that process, it was 5 weeks until I was able to have surgery. So I was in a wheelchair and crutches for 5 weeks while everything was still torn. Flew back to Colorado, had the surgery to get everything repaired, and stayed in Colorado for a month to just ensure I had a healthy recovery, no blood flow restriction, so I could travel safely. And when I got back, this is where I feel like my journey really started, is when I first got back to California. It is Went to PT for about a month, and doctors and the PT were telling me that it's going to be about a 2 year recovery just with the severity of the injury. And I was like, that's not happening to me. It's like I'm not going to be out for 2 years without touching a basketball or without playing a game. So went to PT for about a month, and I actually just really did not like the experience that I was having, as it was typically just like the PT would come, they would maybe massage and stretch you real quick, and then it was just like toss you over to a student aide who would give you a list of exercises to do. And I just really didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was really much benefiting me to the extent to just like sit on the bench and try to bend my knee. So I took matters into my own hands, actually. And this is where I really decided to take the strength and conditioning route. Also studying a lot of the anatomy and the science behind the body as well. And I had the time to do this because I was on bed rest. So I had nothing else to do all day until I fell asleep. And I took my own PT and recovery into my own hands and recovered even faster and stronger, to the point where the doctors actually asked me what I was doing for my recovery. So I would say that was a big part of just the start of my journey. From there, I do feel the injury itself was very, very humbling. Um, just you don't really realize what you have until you lose it. And that's anything from the game of basketball to also just being physically healthy with legs that work or knees that can move, arms that can move. And you don't really realize that until it's snatched away, and how dramatic your life can really change just with an injury, even. Um, so it's just very humbling to the point where I couldn't walk for 2 months. Um, couldn't I had to relearn how to walk, relearn how to jog, stand on one leg, run, step differently, or land, and all the movements that do come with the sport of basketball. But even more daily life, I couldn't even do that. So I had to baby crawl around the house. I had to try and slide on my butt to get to the kitchen to the living room and try to push myself back up onto the couch, slide down the stairs. So I would just say the injury itself is much more than basketball, but it's more that it really impacts your lifestyle, and even more your mentality and your mental aspect.
Yeah. That's challenging, right? And I feel like it totally shocks your entire system and everything you know about life, right? Like you're talking about that kind of awakening, right? In the sense of, like you can't do all the basic functions like walk and go to the kitchen and make yourself some toast, right? You're like, crab walking there, doing whatever you can to get in, and then like you have to like everything takes a little bit longer, and it sounds like that was a catalyst for your growth. Into becoming a trainer now, a basketball trainer. And so looking into that strength and conditioning and just kind of obsessing over it. And can you talk about how that launch has kind of helped your initiative and fire to now help athletes kind of, seek out the same sort of, fire to develop their, basketball game?
Yeah. Um, that strength and conditioning aspect is huge, and it's not more about what do I do when this injury happens. It's now more about what do I do so this injury doesn't happen. And I feel like that's what a big aspect in strength training and just training in general is missing, is that usually people don't want to take care of their bodies until they start to feel the pain in their back, or now they injured their shoulder, or then now with basketball maybe they sprain their ankle or tweak their knee. And most people don't want to do that strength and conditioning or that recovery aspect of the stretching and the strengthening and the going through that whole progression until it happens. So I would say that's a big thing that I also stress with my athletes is it's either get ready and stay ready. So you're not put in a position where now you're already behind because something did happen and then now you weren't prepared. So I just think that even goes more with life in general. It's always better to stay ready than get ready.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? It's better to be proactive with our trainings and injury prevention than being on the physical therapy side of things and then having to rehab, right? So getting in front of things. So how do you include that in your trainings? And what advice do you have to other coaches and parents that are listening for their athletes to, start taking some of that injury prevention into their daily and weekly routines?
So whether they have a coach that is familiar with the strength and conditioning aspect and just the anatomy and the biomechanics of the body, then I would also recommend that they do have a coach for their athlete that can also specialize in that. For myself, just since I'm familiar with both the biomechanics and the strength and conditioning, and then a big time of the basketball, I actually include both of them into my training. So there are times, sometimes I do just focus on the strength and conditioning with an athlete. And I also analyze their body and just see what I notice. So sometimes, like, people's feet are angled up where their pinky toes might be facing up. So when they plant and they're going like heel to toe, their feet are actually coming like this. So it's very, very much like pronated to the point where now I see it where it's like, well, because they're pronated, that might mean now their knees are caving in, which could put them at risk for an ACL. So when I'm training an athlete, I will take note and be like, how can I get them to be more, not flat footed, but more stabilized with their position, which then will also equal out their knees and then also their hips. So that's also kind of it's a whole chain, and that's kind of what drives my training is I build from the ground up, whether it's strength or whether it's basketball. I start with pivots, or I'll start with jab steps, or let me work on your base. Everything I do, I emphasize a wide base. So that's very much I feel how it plays a part, especially with the fact that I had to kind of take matters into my own hand to learn this and get certified as a NASM CPT um, and corrective exercise specialist as well.
Got you. Yeah, so I mean, that makes sense too, right? Because you're talking about if you're going to build a house, right? You want to lay down the cement, the foundation first, and then you're working up, right? You're not starting with
Exactly.
the roof first. So, for those, coaches like myself who are relatively familiar with biomechanics, but, we aren't experts on it, where do you recommend that we begin, kind of looking and identifying so we can learn more about biomechanics? Because I feel like even just a regular coach should have some general understanding of how players move. And I think, like we just talked a little bit about deep skill, which is above, and obviously it's not a deep dive and it's not going to certify you. However, it kind of got my mind thinking a lot about athletic movements and beyond. So where's a great place to begin?
Honestly, I'll recommend this for absolutely everyone is Google. We have access to a database right here on our phone and computer where you can absolutely learn anything. Um, Even just with asking a simple question, you can always find a credible article, and I think that's the best place to start is just from your curiosity. And I think that should be what drives your learning is pretty much how curious you are. There's infinite amount that you should be able to learn in regard to in this situation like basketball or strength or caring for the body, and seeing what studies are out there already and kind of putting in your own touch as well. So that's kind of where a lot of my strength and conditioning comes from is like studies, research, as well as what I know worked for myself and other athletes that I've worked with, and kind of combining that study into their programs. And then that way I know this is going to help them with their flexibility or their hypertrophy or muscle endurance, whatever their target is and goal that we're trying to reach. So I just think, again, the best place to start is right there in your phone.
There we go. Got Google. You're saying there's no excuses.
I
You know,
truly
you got,
believe there. You're right. No, there's no excuse.
yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense, and you don't need to go and get a huge degree if you're trying to you notice something in your athlete, and you can kind of look that up, right? And it's an opportunity. And I actually, curiosity is one of BTG's values, because I am such a big believer in curiosity and teaching kids and our athletes how to be lifelong learners. And it's important for us as coaches to be lifelong learners. And I'm just curious, how much time do you spend during the week? Because I know obviously you're training, you have your day job, learning, new skills, whether that's, basketball wise, leadership wise, or strength and conditioning.
From a time standpoint, honestly, that's hard because I don't really keep a metric of like hours or anything or days. But I would just say every day I am doing something to just further my knowledge, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 hours on weekends, or I'm just always looking and researching of what's the next thing I could do? What's the next thing I could do to grow? What's the next thing I could do to learn that might help this athlete, which then will help the next athlete with this. So a lot of what my studying actually is too is yes, of course, like the resources that I do have that allow me to learn and that teach me. But the best way to learn is you do your study, then you apply it. And then if it fails, that's now an extra learning point because now it's just trial and error and you get to learn from your mistakes. So I just think the best way to learn and drive that experience is from your curiosity to the application to failure. And then you rerun that cycle and now you're again better prepared for the next situation. Or you could make those minor tweaks that now you're like, that doesn't work, but this will. So I think that's a big thing that drives my learning from a time standpoint. Infinite. I'm always trying to learn.
I love that. Yeah, just trying to get 1% better each day. I think one thing that I'm, kind of, I guess, obsessing over and really curious about is I'm really curious about like unlocking talent and unlocking potential. So
Nice.
talent code right now. Greatness isn't born, it's grown, right? So you're literally talking about that right now. You're talking about learning and growing, right? we could be coaches and we could say, this is what we know, and this is how we're going to coach for the rest of our lives. And me and you probably both know coaches that coach like that. However, I feel like, one of the things that I'm hearing from you is that you're choosing that every single day I'm going to try and learn and get something, apply something a little bit new to that. Can you talk about Level Up LA and how it started? And obviously, it sounds like this principle of getting 1% better and leveling up every time you probably work with an athlete, each time you connect with them. Can you talk about how it started and how these principles, how you practice these principles with your athletes?
Totally. So Level Up LA actually started just with me training the neighborhood kids and from where I grew up. And it was a lot of like younger athletes to where it had to be creative and fun to keep their intention and make games so they could learn the fundamentals. It wasn't so much of like doing drills. It was more trying to make things game based and competitive because that's just what drives kids to have fun. Um, so from there, I actually then began to then train middle school athletes where it became a little bit more serious. And then again, high school athletes, and that was more of like the intensity and the volume have now increased. Um, Moved out to California then and kind of had to restart that all over as I didn't have any client base. So I was a student at Cal Lutheran University where I was playing and getting my degree, and I was like, I need to start training. Like I have something that I feel others should learn from, and where I could also feel as if I'm being a model figure in someone's life and just inspire others to get better. So I started that and kind of like the same trajectory. I started with youth athletes, middle school, high school, which of course I'll still work with today. But that then took me to training a lot more college and pro, which I got very fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be in the gym with some of the guys that we can, of course, talk about and touch upon. Um, but that was kind of like the journey of Level Up LA. But the meaning behind Level Up LA is no matter where you are in life, in the game, in school, the only way is up. And that's my slogan is only way up. So doesn't matter if you're the best, there's always something better that you can improve on. And that's what really drove the name of Level Up LA.
I love that. You kind of you touched on it. You've coached youth through professional athletes. And when you come and you approach, whether it's a youth athlete or a pro athlete, how do you train? What's different about each level, and how do you meet each level, where they're at skill wise and maturity wise?
I would say a big foundational aspect for me when I'm training someone is building the relationship first. And that's just because I don't want to just be just the coach to them. I want to actually be someone that can get to know this person outside of just basketball, because basketball isn't always going to be there one day. There's going to be a day where you play your last game or have your last practice, and it's more about what has this game taught you in the journey. So with like youth athletes and honestly every athlete, even to the pros and the NBA All-Stars I've gotten to work with, it's more about introducing yourself and really genuinely caring about how that person is. So, some people might just say like, "Hey, how are you?" And that's really it, but they don't really care too much to like how you really are. So for me, it's, I'll introduce myself and I really want to get to know this person, get to know their interests. What are they like outside of basketball? What is their mindset like? And really build that and drive that connection based off that. Because if I don't have much of a connection of them on the court or even off the court, they're really not going to want to listen to me too much as their coach if they don't have that connection or that respect on a mutual level. But that's just really a big thing for me is that I'm not better than the next person. I'm not better than my athlete that I'm working with. We're very much everyone just on the same level, and that's the respect that I give to a 6-year-old or a middle school or high school athlete, or even just an NBA all-star who's one of the best players in the world, is I give the same respect for everyone.
That's huge. And it sounds like we share a lot of similar principles because you talk about connection first. That's again one of our other values as well. You know, I talk a lot about valuing the human being and then the athlete, right? Because at the end of the day, you're
100%.
right. We named it BTG basketball because it's beyond the game basketball, because we all have a life beyond the game, right? Whether it's currently we have a life beyond the game or it's after, you know, we all hang up our shoes. You know, there, unfortunately, we can't play at a high level forever. Even Michael Jordan and LeBron James will
Very true.
eventually. I don't know if LeBron will ever retire. Who knows?
I don't know. At this pace, he's going crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, with that, I think it's just so important to have that connection first and really get to know your athlete, because that builds trust, right? At the end of the day,
Does.
you know, an athlete is looking for a coach that they can trust and know that they have their best interests in them. And so can you talk about how, you know, that trust then helps them actually end up getting better results?
Totally. And I think the word is perfect, is trust. A lot of coaches like to use the word or the phrase buy in, like buy into my offense, buy into my defense. And that's more of just like you telling them, like, buy in, like give it to me. Like, and I just feel like athletes don't really respond to that all that well, because then they just feel like they have to listen. Um, I like the word saying trust. Um, Trust, kind of like the 76ers, or trust the process. So I feel like that's a big thing that I try to preach to my athletes to continue to learn and grow, is just trust. And I'm not here to put them in a position of failure. I'm here to only help them accomplish their goals and even push them in a direction that will be challenging. It's not easy, but they will be better prepared for the next opportunity to come, or the team that they're trying out for, or the role that they currently have on their team. So that's a big thing that I try to push, is more of like trusting the process versus just buying in from that sense.
Right. And I think the process is a really interesting point because we all like we actually met through social media and to talk about connection first, right? We actually like met at a LA Sparks
I know, that
game
was crazy.
where it's like, yo, you know, are you Coach Furtado? I'm like, yo, Jason, yeah, you know, so like it's so cool just from that connection, right? And then kind of getting to that point of, you know, one of the things is we think about, because it's such social media is so important, and I actually think it's a good thing and a bad thing right at the same time.
Yeah.
And everyone wants results right now, right? But you're just talking about trusting the process. And you have 7 years of experience in being in here and probably watching certain athletes develop quicker and some athletes develop slower. How do you approach your athletes in a way of, you know, it's different, right? Every athlete gets results at a different pace. And how do you help athletes kind of understand that everyone has their own, you know, race, but more so journey?
So that's where I feel like I kind of separate myself from other players or coaches or trainers, or just this is what I pretty much feel makes me different, is I grew up always being the kid that was overlooked or picked last, or was always put on the worst team, or what, didn't get playing time. And I feel that you either have a decision to fight or flight. So you could either push towards your goals, or the easy thing to do is quit. And that was just one thing that I never do, is quit. So I'll kind of talk about my story real quick, and then kind of talk about how I feel like it relates to how I train athletes that develop at a different pace. So pretty much like mentioned, always grew up being the kid that was picked last, put on the worst team, told I can't do it, or I'm not big enough, fast enough, athletic enough, or not skilled enough. And that happened ever since I could actually remember. It happened in middle school. I wasn't put on the best team, told I wasn't good enough. I got to high school and actually played pretty well my freshman, junior year, but my or my freshman sophomore year. My junior year actually came, and I was told I'm going to be the next top prospect for varsity of my high school. And they're like, you're the point guard and shooting guard we need. We need your speed, your quickness. We need like your scoring ability. Um, well, those tryouts came, and I honestly played very well and killed it. And then when it was time to find out what team I was, I went to go put my jersey away in the equipment locker room, and I had the door shut behind me with the three coaches following me into the locker room. And I kind of turned around and was caught off guard, and they were like, "Sit down." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay." Like, and I'm just kind of confused. Like, I'm just like, "What's going on?" And they just laid it all out on me, and they were like, "F you, you're a cocky son of a, you're a mother effer. I wouldn't pick you either. You're not good enough. You don't belong here. You don't play like one of us." And I'm like, "What is going on?" And they were just laying it all out me. And it was the varsity coach, it was the varsity assistant, and it was the JV coach. So, and they were all just kind of dogpiling on me. So pretty much at the end of that talk, I don't even want to say it was much of a talk, but they told me to leave, and they told me to leave the school. And I was like, "What? Okay, like that's weird telling me to leave the school at this point." So I just remember very clearly I asked the question, "Where do you want me to go? You pick." And they're like, "Go to Englewood or Littleton? You should go to Littleton." And I was like, "Deal, I will." So the very next day, got my transfer papers, and I put them in and submitted them to Littleton High School in Colorado. Reached out to the coach from there and sent a clip that I had of me playing in the game, and he was like, "Yeah, come to our practice. Like, let's see this." I get there, and he was like, "Holy crap!" He's like, "They told you to leave," and I was like, "Well, I'm here now, so I'm not leaving." So pretty much right then, had to sit on my junior year just with transfer rules. I couldn't play. But my senior year came, and this is where it kind of switched up. Is I went from getting cut, um, having all the negative things kind of placed against me, to becoming a top player in the state of Colorado the very next season. And I remember seeing my old high school coaches that just told me to leave in the stands at my high school game watching me. And they were like, "What? Like, that is insane." So I think it's just all drives from my mindset, but that's very much how I train my athletes. Um, but fast forwarding, got recruited to college, played played in college, but when at the end of that last season, we had our end of season meetings, and that coach pretty much said the same thing that I was told in high school, that I'm not a good player. He said, "You're not fast, you're not athletic, you can't dribble, you can't shoot, you can't play defense." And I'm like, "Coach, you're just saying I suck at basketball at this point." He's like, "Yeah, you do." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, like I don't want you anymore." And I was like, "You know what? I can't do this." I was like, "But I'm gonna prove you wrong." And he was like, "How you gonna do that?" And I said, "Just watch." I was like, "I'm gonna come back." And that following season is then when I began to make the jump to play semi-pro, where it was playing against a lot of like overseas pros, NBA G League, um, current pros, or players trying to get back into the league. Um, so a very wide variety of professional athletes. And I made that jump, and he was very much surprised, and that was kind of like the end of my journey where I stopped playing college and made that transition. But this is very much how I train my athletes, from a sense that I was the best player, I was the worst player, I was always had the odds placed against me and told I couldn't do it. And I feel I've been in every situation that a player could be placed in, to where now I've been prepared and have been through that to pass on that wisdom and experience through my training, and how to overcome the odds that are stacked against yourself. So yeah.
That's a pretty wild story, and obviously, I could ask, kind of the easy questions in terms of, I'm sure those experiences were motivating. But I think one of the things that we can kind of take away from this is, it could have been really, really easy for you to hang up your shoes when not one, but two groups of coaches told you that you should hang it up. And the persistence that you had through their, kind of negative and trying to bring you down. And, I think I commented on your Instagram post today, which I maybe follow up on here, is
Yeah.
you were persistent on it, right? And what do you think really drove you through it? Like, why did you want to continue sticking with it even though everyone was telling you can't?
At the end of the day, I believe in myself. And I knew that the hard work and the time and effort that I've put into it and just my drive and vision that I've had for my future oversaw what any coach or any authoritative figure that maybe saw against me or didn't see the potential that I saw in myself. So I feel that's a very big thing, is at the end of the day, you have to be you have to be your biggest fan, your biggest supporter, and your biggest motivator to accomplish your goals. And there's going to be times where coaches or teammates or even parents are going to actually place that negativity on you, and it's really up to you to either take it or leave it, and continue to push towards your vision.
That's huge. And with that, one of the things that, you posted today, and is obviously it's a hot topic within our own basketball community, is, everyone no, I'm not going to say everyone, everyone, a lot of people, a lot of athletes expect or want, I would say want to play college basketball. You have played college basketball.
Yes.
What does that entail? Because the I will, obviously the people that are listening to it right now, they're not just they may scroll back into the Instagram feed after you share it here in a little bit. But can you explain a little bit more about what that post was about, and just how important it is for athletes to understand how hard it is to play collegiate basketball?
So yeah, that post was pretty much about that there's over 500,000 high school athletes nationwide, and only 7% really get to go on to play college. So it's really just a numbers game. Thinking about it, is that 500, 7%, you obviously want to be a player that contributes on your team, gets playing time. So the percentage is very small. Out of that 7%, only about like 3% really get to go D1. So it just continues to get smaller and smaller, and then the rest follows with D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO. So the numbers are just very much stacked against yourself. On top of that, the average height of a male collegiate basketball player is 6'4", and I'm 5'8". So the dude's almost a whole foot taller than me. But with that being said, it's not easy, and the numbers are stacked against yourself. So being a small guard or a smaller athlete, or someone who maybe isn't getting the same amount of looks as a teammate or a competitor or a top recruit, you have to work twice as hard, but it's also you have to work twice as smart. So as a small guard, what separates myself is what can I control, my effort, my attitude, um, work ethic on and off the court, the discipline that I have to stay low on defense, or being extra scrappier. And now I have to work twice as hard to create separation. I got to get twice as low now to beat my 6'4" defender. So it's just everything is having to be two times more, two times more. And that was kind of my whole mentality, being an undersized guard and always being the smallest guy on the court, is I had to play twice as big in whatever role that I had on the team. So that was very much what that post was about, is that it's not an easy journey to get to where you want to be, but it can sure get a lot easier the harder you work. So it's easier. It's a harder journey, I should say, but your results will come.
And do you think working twice as hard has now helped you as a trainer and as a business owner?
1000%. And I just feel that I'm truly prepared for anything. And it starts with up here. And I think that's what really drove the whole thing, is that my mentality was, even though I'm the smallest guy, I'm going to lock up on defense, or I'm going to guard the best player. Doesn't matter if he's 6'6", I'm still going to guard him. He wants to try to post me up, I'm going to front him. I'm not going to let him post me up. So it was more about just like always having that dog mentality to show that I'm here to stay, and I'm here to last, and I'm here to overcome. And I think that's just what really drives me for business, drives me for from a training aspect, a coaching aspect, and a life aspect.
Yeah, I love that. Got to be feisty, and we're underestimated, right? I have a similar story. I think you went a little bit further in terms of basketball career, but it's just I feel like I'm grateful that I got cut because it drove me, and it's the reason I probably am a coach and understand the game so well today, because I knew that my athleticism wasn't going to get me by. It was going to be my intelligence of the game and understanding, and so that's kind of a big reason why I am where I am today. And it sounds like it's a similar story for you. And as we wrap up this podcast, I think obviously I have the question of who is this NBA All-Star? Are you allowed to share this information?
I could
And
share. So
you can share
um,
it.
I've had the opportunity to work with Chris Paul, Zach Levine. Um, who else am I blanking on? I've been in the gym with Harry Giles. Um, Honestly, the list can go on to where DeMar DeRozan, Chris Paul and DeMar DeRozan were the two biggest NBA All-Stars that I've gotten to work with, that are obviously some of the best players in the world and have played for Team USA, um, gold medalist. So it's just huge to be given that opportunity, that I've been the one to help these athletes along their journey, even if it was just for a summer prior to me getting hurt, but pass on at least my tips and tricks and my training methods and my IQ, to help make these athletes better. Even though they're pros, and what tends to happen is because they're pros, everyone feels that they know everything already. However, they don't. They're humans too. There's always something that they could do better, as they're not perfect in their role. There's always something with like either of those all stars. I'll just use them as examples, but like with Chris Paul, we were working a ton on his passing, obviously, because he's very much like a get in the paint and kick, or getting to his mid range. And a lot of our trainings were designed about him getting to his spots, coming off of screens and attacking his spots. Or there's a lot of little details that he does so well that make him such an effective player as an undersized guard, but even an assist leader in the world and the league. Whereas DeMar DeRozan, he's not very much a drill based player. Like, you want to put him in drills, it's not like where he thrives. He's a very much like read and react kind of player. So it's more about giving him the structure and letting him play out of that structure to where now he's going to find his shot, or that's where he's going to get to his mid range and hit you with that pump fake, let you jump and hit, go into you or go rise up above you for his midi. So it was very much knowing knowing the play styles of these players. And I think that very much drives what you should do with all of your athletes from mostly high school and up, is that everyone has their own play style. It's about how can we make them thrive in their role and their play style to make them an effective basketball player. But yeah,
Yeah.
those are some opportunities that I've had to work with, and that was with the NBA trainer Dribble Too Much, for also giving me the opportunity to bring me on to train these athletes with him. So very much thankful for that, as it opened up doors for me and more experience and more knowledge and IQ to also ask these players questions I've never would have been able to ask anyone else, or even I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but from growing up, from being a kid growing up and watching these players from Chris Paul on the Hornets, uh, or DeMar DeRozan on the Raptors, like years and years ago, to just seeing them on TV, to them being in the gym with them, and seeing how they've also grown and developed in their 10, 15 plus years in the league is very much like a opportunity that I'm thankful for, to even kind of have that dream become a reality, and just even be like, I've been a part of their journey. Dude, it's just, I feel like, very much crazy to say.
That's a true full circle moment right there.
Couldn't have said it better.
That's so cool. So yeah, where can people find and connect with you if they really enjoy this conversation and want to continue the conversation, maybe even want to get some work in?
Yeah, so my Instagram is LVLUP.LA, Level Up.LA. Yeah, I post all of my content on there. You can find all of my resources on there, whether it's my website. Obviously, you can find my Instagram profile from the username. But I also have my knee program that I myself created, that I used during my ACL recovery, that really helped me thrive with coming back to the game and overcoming that injury. So I think that's very much where you can find me on Instagram. You can DM me anytime. I respond to absolutely everyone. My phone number is even on there, so if you even wanted to text me or call me, I answer absolutely everyone, as I just want to be a valuable resource for anyone that has questions. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, so much. I appreciate your time. Got a page of notes here, and I value our connection. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Of course. Let's definitely try to figure out a way that we could continue to work together and build together, and maybe even combine BTG and Level Up.
Yes, sir. Listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts. And this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.